Welcome to TOPIA, where anything goes as long as it's good. My name is Simone Angel, and this is the first in a special series of cosmic chats from the jungle. And I really am in the jungle. I mean, this is not a Zoom background. And that's an actual monkey. Yes, I'm in Belize, Central America, and today I'll be talking to Steve Brusatte, who's one of the stars of modern day paleontology. As a young boy growing up in the American Midwest, Steve was obsessed with Jurassic Park, and now he's actually a consultant, not only on the Jurassic Park franchise, but also on Walking with Dinosaurs, BBC Earth and Prehistoric Planet. He teaches at Edinburgh University, and he's a New York Times bestseller thanks to his pop science book, The Rise and Fall of the Dinosaurs. And his latest, The Rise and Reign of the Mammals, came out in June of 2022. This season's theme of Topia is the egg. And seeing as we're trying to crack life's mystery, where better to start than roughly 66 million years ago, when an asteroid struck the Earth, contributing to the global extinction of dinosaurs, leaving birds as their only living descendants. So, did they go up with a bang or a whimper? What can we learn from it? And what really did come first, the chicken or the egg? So, fossil fans, let's get existential with the real Ross, Steve Brusatte. Steve Brusatte, thank you so much for joining me today. I am so happy to be talking with you. Oh, yeah.
Well, thank you. Thanks for inviting me. This is going to be a fun chat.
Well, when I found out that this season's theme for Topia was the egg, straight away I was thinking of dinosaur eggs. I mean, the coolest eggs ever, right? And then the other thing I was thinking about was dinosaurs evolving into birds. So those are two things that I really would like to start with you. First of all, what do we know about dinosaur eggs?
As far as we know, all dinosaurs laid eggs. So dinosaurs would have been like lizards and crocodiles and snakes and turtles and birds today. You know, they only laid eggs. We have fossil dinosaur eggs. We have quite a lot of fossil dinosaur eggs, actually. And they vary in size and in shape. They even vary in color. And we can tell that they belong to lots of different types of dinosaurs because occasionally, although it's a very sad thing to think about, but it happens. We find the fossilized little embryos or babies sometimes in the egg, and that tells you this is a long-necked dinosaur, or this is a meat-eating dinosaur, or this was a duck-billed dinosaur that laid these eggs. So we actually have a decent number of fossils of dinosaur eggs. Sometimes we even find those eggs arrayed into nests. Sometimes we find parent dinosaurs fossilized sitting on top of their nests. Sometimes we find fossilized nesting grounds where there's a bunch of nests together preserved in the rock as fossils. So the more we learn, the more it seems like that although all dinosaurs probably laid some type of egg, there was a great diversity of behaviors as far as how dinosaurs reproduced and raised their young, and at least some dinosaurs would have been very good parents that would have tended to their nests and to their eggs, just like many birds do today.
Wow, because you spoke about like a Chinese Pompeii, somewhere where a whole bunch of dinosaurs, like a whole ecosystem got buried, right? And just found pretty much intact.
That's right. There was this time about 125 million years ago, give or take. Transport yourself back to the early part of the Cretaceous period, up in what is now northeastern China. It's a place today called Liaoning province in China. It's a part of the country that borders North Korea, way out of the tourist trail, but it's holy ground for dinosaur hunters and for fossil hunters because during the early Cretaceous, about 125 million years ago, you had these entire ecosystems there. The trees, the dinosaurs, the birds, the mammals, the frogs, the turtles, the fishes, the insects, everything preserved, locked into stone, petrified in place because of these volcanic eruptions, almost like Pompeii in Italy. When Mount Vesuvius erupted and it buried Pompeii, it set everything into stone. And you get a sense of that city, of that ancient city, how the city was laid out, the people in the city. It's like that with these dinosaurs and other fossils. And so that's why we know, for instance, that a lot of dinosaurs had feathers, because at this dinosaur Pompeii in China, these dinosaurs were buried so quickly by the volcanic ash and by some of the other rocks formed from the volcanoes that they didn't have time to decay away. There wasn't time for scavengers to come and eat them. So the feathers are preserved as fossils. The skin is preserved. Sometimes you see the last meals in their stomachs. And it's really the fine preservation of those feathers that tell us that, yes, today's birds did evolve from dinosaurs, because many dinosaurs did have feathers and even wings on their bodies.
Wow. Yeah, I love what you said, that flight is something that happened when the time was right.
Yeah,
I just want,
amazing, right? So evolution during the Jurassic period is probably when this happened. Evolution produced a flying dinosaur, or what we call a bird. So evolution took dinosaurs that lived on the ground and turned them into small dinosaurs with feathers and wings that could fly. And that's where birds came from. And it's something that happened gradually. There wasn't some freak mutation where the DNA of some dinosaur just was altered in one fell swoop. But what we see in the fossil record is over tens of millions of years that many of the things that today make birds birds, the things that define the bird body, the bird blueprint, feathers, wings, wishbones, growing really fast, beaks, all of these different things, they evolved one by one in dinosaurs for a variety of reasons. Because evolution doesn't plan ahead. Evolution doesn't act with foresight. Evolution doesn't just say one day, hey, in 10 million years, we want to make a flying dinosaur. It doesn't happen. Evolution by natural selection just shapes animals or organisms to whatever particular time and place they're living in. It shapes them to the challenges they face. So things like feathers, although today, of course, feathers are what make up the wings of birds. They're the things that allow birds to fly. They did not evolve for that reason. And we can tell that because the first feathers that show up in the fossil record on dinosaurs are very simple little things. They look like little strands of hair. And these dinosaurs couldn't have flown with those feathers any more than I can fly with my hair. So they probably, the first dinosaurs evolved feathers probably to help keep them warm, to insulate their bodies as a winter coat. And then later on, some dinosaurs elaborated those feathers. Those feathers grew longer and they became more complex, and they turned those into wings that could fly. But the point is really that even something as fundamental to birds today as feathers, they did not evolve so birds could fly. They first evolved for other reasons, and then evolution repurposed them. And the way I like to think about it is, when the Wright brothers invented the airplane, when they flew the first airplane, what did they do? They put pieces together. They put wings, of course, there. They put propellers on those wings. Those propellers powered the wings. But propellers were first invented to move boats through the water. But the Wright brothers repurposed them to move planes through
yeah.
the air. And that's how evolution works. And that's how birds originated, by things like feathers being repurposed into flying structures.
I think it's a beautiful metaphor as well for us humans to hold on to. Maybe at one point, we will overcome certain challenges that we have, with just little changes that we are making. So one of the things that I really appreciate about you and about your books, I mean, you call them, pop science, is you use stories. And I think you understand the importance of stories, because as a child, it was Jurassic Park, it was the movie, it was the stories around it that pulled you in, right?
Absolutely. So when I write popular science books, like The Rise and Fall of the Dinosaurs, or the new one I've just written on mammals, it's called The Rise and Reign of the Mammals. Got to get the book plugs in there, of course. When I write these books, I try to tell big stories about evolution. I want to tell the story of dinosaur history, where dinosaurs came from, how they became dominant, how some of them grew to enormous sizes, how others developed feathers and wings and became birds, and then how all of them, except for birds, went extinct when that asteroid hit. I like to tell these big stories of evolution, and I try to break them down into smaller pieces, and through different ways of storytelling, try to convey to the reader what it's like to find a dinosaur fossil, to study dinosaurs, the tools that we use, the people, the personalities that study dinosaurs. It's some of those stories that I think enlivens the science and makes it more relatable. I think that's the way I do it.
No,
Some people like it, some people don't, but it's how I like to write and make it relatable.
it totally works. I love how you take people like paleontologists, like people who've come before you and people that you work alongside, and you turn them into rock stars in your book. I love it.
Well,
You
I'm
make them.
always trying to give respect and give credence and credibility and pay homage to the people who have inspired me, my mentors, the people I've learned from, the paleontologists from older generations who did a lot of the seminal work, who made the great fossil discoveries, but also the people of my generation and my students and the people that I teach. This is a human endeavor. Science is a human thing. There are human beings that do science, whether it's dig up dinosaur bones, whether it's split the atom, whether it's build a rocket ship. And I think as far as to conveying to people these big issues of science, and in this case, this evolution, how evolution works, how the Earth changes over time. I think telling stories about actual people doing the work, making the discoveries, does make it relatable. Those were the kind of books I liked to read when I was first becoming obsessed with fossils and dinosaurs when I was in high school. I read everything I could find. That's really how I learned. I grew up in the middle of America, in the middle of the cornfields and the bean fields. Not any dinosaurs found within hundreds of miles of where I was from. It was books that I disappeared into that really fueled this enthusiasm I have for fossils. And a lot of those books were books written by scientists talking about the things they discovered, what it was like to go and dig up a dinosaur bone, what it was like to be in the lab and make a revelation, a discovery. So I like those stories. I think it's the most engaging and accessible way to convey what sometimes can be quite complicated science, which can have a lot of jargon and a lot of terminology, and it's easy to get mired into that stuff. So I try my best to stay out of that and use storytelling and the human side of things to bring the science
Yeah.
alive.
I think it's important because most people, let's be honest, most people are scientifically challenged, like me. This is why
I
I
think
think
it's
your
true of
book.
any field, right? I mean, whether it's science or economics or politics or history or whatever it is, I think any discipline, any field of study, or even anything, I mean, learning how to drive a car or whatever, I mean, you have to put time into it, and you can get bogged down into it. You can get bogged down into details. Uh, and it's easy to go astray with it, and it's easy to give in, to the steep learning curve sometimes to these things. So I always just see it as my job when I write these books to try to do my best to make these things accessible to the widest audience. I really am thinking about like me as a teenager reading these books. I'm thinking about people I went to high school with, people I grew up with, people who aren't scientists, who are doing all kinds of things, from driving trucks to doing surgery. All walks of life, just trying to find a way to talk about the science I do and the science I love in a way that can reach the largest number of people without alienating them, without trying to talk down to them or anything like that. That's what I strive for. Whether it works or not, I don't know, but I have a lot of fun doing it.
Oh, I think it's working for a lot. I mean, there's people like my mom. My mom cracked me up when I told her that I was going to be talking to one of the world's leading dinosaur experts
Oh,
today.
thank you.
She said, "Oh dear, well, that's lovely, but I doubt that anyone will still be interested in that because let's face it, dinosaurs died out a long time
Well,
ago."
she is right, and that's look, I hear that a lot. It's like these things are dead. They've been dead for so long. Like maybe they're cool for kids. Why should we care about them? I think we should, because this is our own history. We are part of the history of life. We are the new kids on the block. The Earth is 4.5 billion years old. We want to understand how the Earth has changed over time. We want to understand what our ancestors went through. We want to understand how real plants and animals and ecosystems have responded to real moments of climate and environmental change, to global warming, to ice ages, to big volcanoes erupting, to asteroids. We want to understand this. Paleontology, fossils are the context that tell us how the Earth has worked over time and how we got here today. And that's why I think it's relevant. But at the same time, let's face it, studying things like T-Rexes and woolly mammoths and saber-toothed tigers is just really cool. It's fun, and I'm very fortunate to get this opportunity to make a career out of this and to write about it. And so, I just feel very lucky that I can that I can do this, and there's people that are interested in, in reading what I have to write.
Well, and the thing is, you guys you're discovering so many new things all the time. So, I mean, there's like the stuff where, apparently T-Rexes had feathers and what are you again? The Velociraptors apparently too, right? They had
Yes.
feathers. I
Hmm.
mean, it's just that's kind of nuts. The other thing that I found really nuts was finding out that that we discover about one new species of dinosaur every week. I
Isn't
mean,
that
that's just
wild? It
insane.
seems unbelievable, doesn't it? But it's true. It's a number that, about 50 new species are found every year, give or take. And that's been going on for well over a decade now. The pace of discovery has just ramped up. I mean, COVID has dampened that a little bit because a lot of us couldn't go out and do field work and dig up new fossils, during the worst of the pandemic. But by and large, this pace of discovery is just continuing full speed ahead. It means, by the way, there's still a lot to be found. I mean, that should show young people that, we have not found anywhere near all of the fossils. There's still cool stuff to be found. And really the reason is because there's more young people looking. That's why there are so many new fossil discoveries. There are more people looking than ever before all around the world. It's not just little boys growing up in the US or Canada or Britain, that are becoming paleontologists. It's people all over the world. And I have colleagues in, China and Argentina and in Brazil, South Africa, all over the world, young people making incredible discoveries. A lot of them, by the way, say it's Jurassic Park that got them into the field. So those films have had a huge impact.
Yeah.
So we are in this golden age of discovery because there's more people looking, because the field is becoming more accessible. And let's face it, anybody can find a dinosaur. You know, you don't have to be a professional paleontologist. You don't have to be a professor. You don't have to have a PhD. A lot of the best discoveries are made by hikers, by construction workers, by farmers. And that makes this field of paleontology very accessible. I think a very almost like populist type of science, if you will. You can be an amateur paleontologist. You can collect fossils on the weekend. It's very hard to be an amateur nuclear physicist or something
Right.
like that. So that's
Yeah.
one thing I love about the field, that I'm one of the lucky people that does get to make a career out of it. But a lot of the best discoveries are not made by people like me in the universities. They're made by people from all walks of life. And I think that's really cool.
Yeah, and then sometimes you guys, the paleontologists, you then discover a new species on eBay or Facebook, right? I mean, where
Yeah,
people are
yeah.
trying to sell parts of dinosaurs sometimes without even realizing that that's what they have.
Yep, there's a lot of times we will find a new species in the storehouse of a museum. It was something that was collected decades ago, maybe even 100 years ago. It
Oh,
was conserved, it was put in the museum, it was kept safe. It just there wasn't the resources, the expertise maybe at the time to study it, or people didn't quite know enough at the time to be able to put it into context. But with the more we've learned now with modern eyes, we can maybe better understand what those fossils are. So that happens a lot, just going through older collections. And then sometimes, yeah, people find dinosaur bones on their own land. This happens a lot in the western US. Sometimes you do see these things put up for auction, which always, gets me a little tear in my eye because I just, hate it when a beautiful dinosaur skeleton, something that could be the centerpiece of a museum that millions of people could see and the kids could go and learn from, when something like that just disappears, into the foyer of some oligarch's third mansion somewhere. That really, it's tragic when that happens. So for anybody out there who maybe has the resources to buy your own dinosaur, hey, donate this thing to a museum. Make sure that it's there for people to enjoy and to be inspired by and to study.
so that's allowed? People can do this? Like there are no laws around this?
It depends what country you're in. Some countries have very strict laws. China, Mongolia, Brazil have very strict laws. If you find a fossil on your own land, it's not necessarily yours to do with as you please. There are kind of national heritage laws and laws about exporting and so on. On the flip side, there's countries like the U.S. where landowner rights, because of our history, because of our culture, take precedence. And so, if you find something on your land, whether it's oil, whether it's diamonds, whether it's a T-Rex, that's yours to do with as you please, which I completely understand. As an American, we don't want the government, in our backyards all the time, telling us what to do all the time. It's part of our culture, but it does mean that sadly sometimes fossils that really should be in a museum where they can be studied, where they can be conserved, where they can be exhibited and inspire the public, that fossils like that can just simply be sold to the highest bidder and become a commodity, wow, which is a sad thing when that happens.
That's crazy. So we were talking about the importance of stories, and of course, you're one of the advisors on Jurassic World, Dominion, and of course Prehistoric Planet, and a whole bunch of other things. But next to stories, the other importance, of course, is data. Mm-hmm. So what is really exciting at the moment for you in the world of data?
Yeah. So, I love communicating science. I love writing books. It was a real joy to work as the consultant for Jurassic World Dominion this summer, and just, working with these Hollywood creative genius types. I mean, they're incredible. The, directors, the artists, the actors. I mean, just amazing, the talent, and to see a small glimpse into that, play a role of bringing science into that world was really cool. But fundamentally, I am a scientist. Most of my time I spend doing science. I spend collecting fossils, studying fossils, analyzing fossils, testing hypotheses about evolution and extinction and changes in Earth history. Most of the time I'm with my students, I'm in the lab, I'm out in the field. That's the bread and butter of my job. And what's really exciting now, there's two aspects I would say. First of all, is that we are still in this almost exponential discovery phase. People are finding a new dinosaur once a week on average. This is still happening. You don't know what those new species are going to be. You don't know until you find them. There are still totally new types of dinosaurs, wacky dinosaurs that we could have never envisioned, that people are finding as fossils. That is always exciting because it's like the gold rush. You don't know. You could find nothing. You could find a gold nugget the size of your head and strike it rich. There's that mentality among paleontologists. That's exciting, the unknown of what you might find. But the other side, the second thing, is that paleontologists these days are using so many advanced technologies, instruments, tools, ways of analyzing things, often borrowed from other disciplines, to study fossils. And a great example of that is CAT scanners. Medical doctors use CAT scanners to see inside our bodies. If something's wrong with us, you might get a CAT scan done instead of just, a doctor chopping us up, going into doing surgery. That's far too risky. Use the x-rays of the CAT scanner. Let's see what's going on inside our body. We can do the same with fossils. We can put a T-Rex head, a skull, in a CAT scanner. That allows us to use the x-rays to see what the brain cavity was like. We can use software to then build digital models of the brain to see how big a T-Rex brain was. And those kind of things just give us unprecedented insight into what these long extinct animals were actually like as real living, breathing, eating, reproducing, moving, evolving creatures. And that's very exciting.
But as far as we know, we humans are the only sentient beings that have ever lived, right? But
yeah,
so
it depends, the definition of sentience. Of course, there's a big, a lot of philosophical debate about terms like sentience and consciousness, right, and all that. But I think humans are certainly, the only species that we know of with brains that are so large and so self-aware that we can ponder what it means to be alive, and we can ponder our own history and the deeper history of the Earth, and we can practice science. We can experiment, we can test, we can collect evidence, and that's absolutely fascinating to me. And I mean, I study mammal evolution in addition to dinosaurs, and my most recent book is all about mammal history, all the 325 million years of evolution that has led to us, and not just us, but the 6,000 other mammals alive today, bats and whales and elephants and kangaroos and dogs and cats and so on. But humans stand alone as this one sublime species that is so intelligent, so aware. and so able to affect the whole planet. And that's something that, occasionally over the history of life, a certain new species has evolved that because of some way that it lives, something it produces, it can have global effects. And humans are the prime example of a species. We evolved completely naturally through the processes of natural selection. And we've reached this point where we are so intelligent, we are so able to work in groups that we can affect the planet in ways that no other species can, for both good and for bad.
Right. I mean, that's the thing. It's like we are so powerful. We're almost too powerful for our own good, yet we're not powerful enough yet to reverse the damage that we're doing. So do you think that moment of flight will come for us at some point? I mean, how hopeful are you for humanity, for us, and the way we're evolving?
Yeah, I mean, I'm hopeful in the large scale, just because we are such an intelligent species. Evolution has endowed us with big brains and consciousness, and with the ability to work together. Not that we always do, but that's an unusual thing, to be able to plan ahead, to have language to communicate in such detail, to form political and social and cultural systems. Although in the short term, things look pretty grim. The world is not the great state now. I think we have all the ability in the world to find ways to harness sustainable energy, to stop warming the planet, to stop polluting the planet. It won't be easy, but we have all the tools that are necessary to do that. And I am hopeful. And maybe that's naive, but I think that we have to be hopeful, and we have to learn from history and prehistory. We can do that. We can look at fossils. We can see the horrible things that can happen if climates change too quickly, if temperature spikes too rapidly. We know that bad things can happen. We know these things are starting to happen now, but we ultimately have the power to do something about it. And I think that will win out in the end.
Yeah. At TOPIA, we like to say that if anything is going to save the world, it's us falling in love with it.
Yes.
But maybe it's us we need to fall in love with, because the Earth will continue to survive with or without us, right?
The Earth has gone through so much. I mean, the Earth has dealt with huge asteroids and cataclysmic volcanoes and ice ages. And, the Earth will endure for a long time. The question really is, will we? As a species, and the world that we know, the world we're comfortable in, the crops that we eat, the cities that we live in, perched on the coasts and so on, this kind of world that we are used to. How will this change? How will this affect us? And I do hope that just by a greater appreciation of nature, a greater appreciation of the great richness of species around us, but also of the long billions of years of evolution, the incredible stories of the history of life, all of this change that's happened that in one way or another has led to today, that appreciating that can give us more respect for the world that we are but one part of.
Yes, so we need some radical optimism. And like you said, we need to work that one very special thing that we have, and that is that we can work together. And so, Steve, honest, I would love to talk to you.
I would love, and I'd love
so
to keep
much
talking.
longer, but I know you're a very busy man.
My last class of the day here in Edinburgh, at the University of Edinburgh. So, I got great students here. It's one of the other perks of this job is that I get to teach amazing young people, undergrads and master's students, PhD students, which I will go off to do now. But thank you very much. What a fun chat this was. And we can do it again sometime.
Thank you very much, Steve Brusatte.
Until the next Cosmic Chat, sign up to the free TOPIA newsletter at worldoftopia.com/sign up. Or follow TOPIA at World of TOPIA for more inspiring interviews.